Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens on News and Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's get started. Despite mounting international pressure, including from US President Joe Biden, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to press forward with its military campaign in Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. In a video addressed to a pro-Israel organization in Washington, Netanyahu said, "We will finish the job in Rafah while enabling the civilian population to get out of harm's way." A growing chorus of voices have joined in calls asking Israel not to enter Rafah, one of the last relatively safe areas where 1.5 million Palestinians have sought shelter. Significantly, just a few days ago, President Biden, Israel's staunchest ally, who seems to be fast losing patience with Netanyahu, had said Rafah is a red line which Israel must not cross. The UN chief has said an invasion of Rafah by the Israeli forces would lead to a slaughter. European Union leaders are planning to urge Israel not to launch a ground operation in Rafah, according to the draft conclusions of an upcoming summit. The draft text says the European Council urges the Israeli government to refrain from a ground operation in Rafah, where well over 1 million Palestinians are currently seeking safety from the fighting and access to humanitarian assistance. In recent weeks, the rift between President Biden and Netanyahu has widened substantially, and the two leaders have been bickering publicly. In a recent television interview, Biden said Netanyahu was hurting Israel more than helping it by conducting the war in Gaza in a way that is contrary to the country's values. Earlier, I spoke to Israel's ambassador to India, Naor Gilon, about all aspects of the Israel-Hamas war, which is now in its 6th month. He echoed Prime Minister Netanyahu's stance on the imminent invasion of Rafah, saying Israel has no other choice. Ambassador Gilon also spoke about why the ceasefire negotiations haven't yielded any results so far, the increasing isolation that Israel currently faces in the international community on account of the rising death toll in Gaza, and he also addressed questions about the growing rift between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu over the latter's handling of the war.
To win this war, we must destroy the remaining Hamas battalions in Rafah. If not, Hamas will regroup, rearm, and reconquer Gaza. And then we're back to square one. And that's an intolerable threat that we cannot accept. We will destroy Hamas, free our hostages, and ensure that Gaza doesn't ever pose a threat to Israel again. We will finish the job in Rafah while enabling the civilian population to get out of harm's way. We've taken measures to minimize civilian casualties that no other army has taken in history.
The president has been very clear about our position on Rafah, and our position is that a military operation in Rafah that does not protect civilians, that cuts off the main arteries of humanitarian assistance, and that places enormous pressure on the Israel-Egypt border is not something that he can support. We are talking to the Israelis about that. We are working through it, and I'm not going to stand at this podium and entertain hypotheticals on it.
So, you just referred to this, Ambassador. From the beginning, it's been said by Israel that one of the primary objectives of this war is to secure the safe release of all the hostages. Yes. More than 100 still remain in Gaza. Now, Hamas says that it seems like Israel is simply not interested in a ceasefire.
I think that it was very evident that the Americans, who are trying to be the go-betweens, said very clearly that Hamas is not interested. Hamas, they as from day one, and from history also before October 7, they never cared about their own population. They don't care about people being able to celebrate the Ramadan in a dignified and normal way. And they are trying to use, because during Ramadan, usually in the Muslim world, the emotions are very high. It's a very emotional period. So they hope what they failed to do to get a full intervention of everyone around. I mean, Israel is occupied by all the pro-Iranian forces. Iran is behind it. It's very clear that de facto we have a war of proxy with Iran, by proxy with Iran. Because all the elements that are engaging Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Shiites militias, both in Syria and Iraq, the Houthis, all of them are proxies of Iran. They are trained, financed, and equipped by Iran. So that's very, very clear. And what Hamas hoped is to create doomsday scenario where everyone is attacking into Israel. But you see that, for example, Hezbollah is very much restricted into the border area, the skirmishes.
Okay.
And they hope, Hamas, that what will save them will be that there will be a full-fledged war because the emotions are high during Ramadan. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Israel now is in very strong control and in high alert. And that's what they're trying to do. They don't care about the people in Ramadan.
President Biden has said in no uncertain terms that launching an offensive in Rafah would be a red line which Israel should not cross. He's also said Israel cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead. The UN chief has said a ground invasion into Rafah could lead to a slaughter. Yet we've heard just over the weekend Prime Minister Netanyahu saying Israel will push ahead with a military offensive in Rafah. I have two questions there. Number one, how soon could it happen? Number two, the question really is, where will the 1.5 million Palestinians who are sheltering in Rafah go?
So let's start maybe with saying a word about President Biden. I think that he defined himself as a non-Jewish Zionist. This is how he refers to himself, and I think that he proved himself as a huge friend of Israel from October 7 onwards, really, in an outstanding way. He's getting, he's in a political campaign in the US for the presidency. He's getting some beaten a little bit of some of his base. Some others are supporting Israel very strongly. That's life. It's very tough. One has to understand, you cannot stop. If we want to achieve what we set, to destroy Hamas regime and everything, and the leadership, and bringing back the hostages, Rafah is part of it. You cannot say, okay, I took 70% of the territory, and I know that all the people escaped, the ones who didn't die, the terrorists who didn't die, escaped there and are now in tunnels there, took the hostages with them. So everyone now is in Rafah.
But you do realize, Ambassador, that these are the people who had been asked to evacuate northern Gaza by Israel. And now they're sheltering there. Where do they go?
I'm getting there. So the first, and speaking from the military point of view, there is no logic for everything. You will never reach your objectives if you let the leadership and the remaining, I don't know how many militants they have, 10,000, 15,000 militants, and with the hostages, hide there. It means that everything you did so far is a waste. Because they will wait, they know they're protected there by international community or by I don't know whom, and they will do nothing. Now, we need to go into Rafah, in order to achieve our goals, and we are working on a plan that will enable safe zones for the people of Rafah to go out, because also according to international law, you should give the people the opportunity to leave a place that is going to be combat zone.
When you say go out, go where?
Into safe, we are preparing, we have a plan of preparing safe zones with tents. And
within Gaza or outside Gaza?
Within Gaza. There are parts of Gaza that are safe, we can keep them safe, can build their facilities to give basic needs of human beings. And this is the idea. We don't want to go into the 5 million people there and start shooting in between civilian population. But we need to do what we need to do.
That President Biden has been expressing his growing frustration with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his handling of the war, and he's been very public and vocal about it of late. Over the weekend, in an interview, this is not even a hot mic moment I'm talking about, in an interview, he said, I'm quoting him, Prime Minister Netanyahu is hurting Israel more than helping Israel. I think it's a big mistake. I want to see a ceasefire. Isn't its staunchest ally, President Biden, losing patience with Israel?
Look, war is a complicated game. It's not easy. People are dying, people are suffering. We have to do what we have to do to survive. I understand also the difficulties of the US, who was a strong supporter of Israel from day one, as I said before. There are the pressures inside, outside of the US. I understand also that side. But I think that President Biden understands Israel more than many people can understand. And he knows that we have to finish the work. I'm sure that deep inside, and again, it's not necessarily easy for him to sell it in a political campaign for the second presidency, but this is something that Israel has to do. Because if not, The next time we will have the October 7th style attack will be very soon, because they understand that because they don't care about casualties. What they care about is what they were able to do, generate hate against Israel in all the world, generate anti-Semitism in levels that we haven't seen for many, many years. And Hamas will do it again. If we don't take the capability from them to do it again, they will do it. They will rebuild themselves. They will be the controllers of Rafah as long as they are there independently. Okay, they will have harder times, but they will use Rafah also as a base because they can build themselves, and they have an exit border there to other places, not only to Israel. They will build themselves again, rebuild, and use it as a basis for attack. And this we have to make sure doesn't happen.
All right, joining me on the show tonight is Major Dan Feferman, formerly with the Israel Defense Forces, Ambassador Suresh Goyal, former Indian diplomat, and Pathikrit Pain, geopolitical analyst. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining me. Major Dan Feferman, if I could begin with you. Now, it is very clear that Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden do not see eye to eye currently on any important issue. The rift between them has been widening with every passing day, and frankly, they've been bickering quite publicly. It is not even a matter of secret or speculation anymore. The latest flashpoint, if I may call it that, seems to be Rafah. President Biden has said Rafah is a red line that Israel must not cross. We've heard the United Nations chief say invading Rafah would lead to a slaughter. Over the weekend, we also heard President Biden, who's thus far been the staunchest supporter of Israel, saying Netanyahu is hurting Israel more than helping it. Yet Prime Minister Netanyahu goes on record yet again to say, we will press ahead with an invasion of Rafah. We will finish the job. The question is, how is this going to unfold, given that, Israel seems to be increasingly isolated on these issues? Netanyahu does not even have support of President Biden as far as invasion of Rafah is concerned, not to mention the fact that there are 1.5 million Palestinians who are currently sheltering in Rafah, and nobody knows where they will be sent.
It's always a dilemma to be an Israeli decision maker. As the ambassador was saying in the recorded interview, President Biden and the United States have been really staunch allies of Israel, and of course throughout this entire war. Did I remind your viewers, Israel did not ask for and Israel did not want, but it has become clear that it is a war that we must finish in order to prevent it from happening again and again. And unfortunately, that means that the last Hamas stronghold of Rafah must be cleared out of Hamas fighters and terrorist infrastructure. What must happen, and this is something that I wish I would see in the private and public communications between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and unfortunately it seems that, of course, the relationships are strong and they run deep, but there does seem to be a public bit of a breakdown in the communication, or the trust, if you will, between the two leaders. It's unfortunate to see that the United States, or at least in the public messaging, is accepting at face value some of the Hamas propaganda. I see the number 30,000 being thrown around time and again, when it's not clear to me at all why international bodies and why advanced countries with advanced intelligence apparatuses are taking at face value the Hamas statistic that's just being thrown out there of 30,000 casualties, where Israel estimates that even if we have that many, and independent academic analyses are coming out that the numbers are probably much smaller, that at least a third, if not half of those, are actually fighters or terrorists from Hamas or from other militant groups. Every time the messaging comes out trying to restrain Israel, then Hamas feels emboldened, which is why Hamas is once again rejecting the American and Israeli ceasefire proposal. This is absolutely ludicrous, and I back what Ambassador was saying in the interview, that Israel seems to care more for Hamas's civilians, for Gazan civilians, than does Hamas. Of course, Israel should and is trying to do everything to limit civilian casualties, which is why it's not conducting an aerial strike. By the way, I'll remind you and your viewers, the United States and many of the Western countries conducted such aerial strikes in their wars against terrorist entities embedded in civilian populations in Iraq and Syria. And so it seems a bit hypocritical. And I think there's a lot of domestic American politics at play here, where President Biden is trying to ensure that the more left-wing progressive voters are staying with him, and there's pressure over them. Israel is not carpet bombing, nor does it plan to carpet bomb Rafah. Prime Minister Netanyahu is talking about establishing safe corridors for Gazans to go. Look, war is messy. War is absolutely messy. The easiest thing to do, and it seems absolutely absurd to me that the international community has not done this, is to put massive pressure on Hamas via especially all of its international supporters, whether in Qatar, whether in Iran, whether in Russia, whether in Turkey, to hand over the hostages, and at the very least, and if the Hamas leadership goes into exile or gives itself up, and this war is over tomorrow. And that seems to be absurd that people are taking at face value Hamas statistics when it shows that it lies or exaggerates time and again for the PR value, and then tries to play some kind of fair interlocutor between a democratic nation that is defending itself versus a genocidal terrorist group backed by Iran and the axis of resistance, and why all of international pressure is not on Hamas to end this war immediately by handing back those hostages and having its leadership go into exile is absolutely beyond me.
Okay, let me take this to Ambassador Suresh Goel. Ambassador Goel, Israelis would have us believe that they really care about the Palestinians and saving Palestinian lives, and that they are fighting this war in a very humane fashion. Honestly, I don't think anybody believes that today except for Israelis themselves. Now the question really is, where is this war headed? One country after another has warned that an invasion of Rafah would be an absolute disaster. Israel has never taken the United Nations seriously, but now it's very clear that Netanyahu is in no mood to listen even to his staunchest ally, President Biden, who's called Rafah a red line. Netanyahu's attitude or approach is very clear. We don't give a damn. We are going ahead and invading Rafah. He believes he's going to finish the job in Rafah. How do you see this?
Neha, it's a difficult question, really. You said humane war. Have you ever heard of a humane war? Every war, civilians get killed. World War II, you remember the images of the people lying on the street. Germany, everywhere. France, Normandy. The only country which actually escaped the effects of war was the USA, because it was too far off across the Atlantic. So therefore, first of all, there is no humane war. Now coming to basically the issue of Rafah. What exactly is the objective here? I don't think Israel has ever agreed to the two-state solution ever, even since President Clinton proposed that the two-state solution. It was never agreed to. It remained on the slate. And the fact remains in that case that basically Palestinians being displaced from their land, which led to the creation of agencies of the United Nations for rehabilitation of refugees and the work, UNRWA, etc., etc. I have dealt with all those issues when I was in the United Nations. But the fact is that that has happened simply because Israel has never believed in independent creation or existence of Palestine. And that is what they're saying now, that there is no two-state solution. So the issue really here is, where do the Palestinians go? Israel's solution is, let the Palestinians go to Jordan, let them go to Egypt, let them go to Qatar, let them go to all the Arab countries, but not be where Israel is. So Israel is actually trying to perpetuate a solution of Israel alone in an area where there will be no Arabs. That is impossible to happen. Ultimately, Israel will be coexisting with the Arab states in that area, whether it is Saudi Arabia or it is Qatar or it is UAE, whoever it is, even if not Palestinian. Therefore, the solution really to me is eventually Israel having to accept what they want to do or where they want to be. There cannot be, if I can really use a phrase here, there cannot be an island of peace in the sea of turmoil. And essentially, the entire Gulf and the entire Middle East is now the sea of turmoil. It's not just Rafah, it's not just Gaza, it's not just basically Palestinians. It's a question of, again, becoming Jews versus Palestinians. And I think Israel has to realize it's not Biden or Trump, whoever comes. Ultimately, they have to exist in the area. And in that area, if they do not take on board the political rights of other people, it is going to remain unstable. And instability will be the price they will be paying. I know Ambassador Gallon said, he's a great diplomat. I admire him. He's just like us, really professionals. When we are in the job, we need to defend our government's positions. But the fact is, what is happening in Gaza is totally untenable.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
What's happening in Gaza is totally untenable, and Ambassador Goel is actually sharing a truth with us as a former diplomat who's represented this country, that, you know, he admires the tenacity with which Ambassador Gillon is defending his country, but he does not envy him, I guess. Nobody does, because it seems like he is defending the indefensible. All right, Patikrit Payan, coming here. Like I said at the start of the show, frankly, the only people who believe that that Israel cares about Palestinian lives are the Israelis themselves. Outside of that country, there is a lot of anger, there's a lot of outrage. Nobody believes what Israel is doing as of today is justified. Yes, there was a lot of support for Israel in the immediate aftermath of 7th October. All that has completely changed. And it's not just me saying it, it's not just other countries and governments saying it. President Biden, the staunchest ally of Israel, is today expressing his utter frustration with Netanyahu and the way he is handling this war. Biden has said multiple things in recent weeks, the most notable of them being Netanyahu is hurting Israel more than he's helping it, and Rafah is a red line. Netanyahu doesn't seem to care. Where do you think this is going? 1.5 million Palestinians sheltering in Rafah right now.
So, Neha, good evening. See, first of all, let me tell you a couple of caveats. First caveat is this, that India has always been a strong supporter of Israel. India has good relations. India believes in the two-nation theory. And India has been
India has also said that the casualties are unacceptable. Let's be very clear, sir. India says we condemn terrorism, but so many civilian casualties are unacceptable.
Yeah, you have to allow me to speak. I said I start with a caveat. I didn't say this is what the entire...
No, but you have to... No, sir, but then you have to give out the complete statement. You can't give just one part of the statement.
No, you cannot...
As a preface to your argument.
Either let me finish.
Sir, it is my job as an anchor to fact check you. You said we have condemned terrorism. Of course we have, but we've also said the civilian casualties are unacceptable.
If you don't allow me to speak, then how would you know what I'm about to speak? I said that India believes in the two-nation theory. I said that India has been against terrorism. I said India supports Israel. But at the same time, it is important for Israel to understand what is the end game they want.
But you have still not quoted India and Jay Shankar and Ruchika Kamboj at the United Nations as having said the civilian casualties are unacceptable. I am sorry if you don't like it, Mr. Pine. It is my job as a journalist to point it out to you. You cannot cherry pick facts. You cannot cherry pick India's statement either. I am sorry. I will have to say that. Now you go ahead, complete your point.
Neha, if you cannot speak for me, if you have called me, let me say what I want to say.
You cannot cherry pick facts.
No,
I am sorry, I will call you out. I will call you out. It is my job to do that as an anchor.
No, that's not what you're doing.
I'm sorry.
You are imposing something. I never said that India endorsed the civilian casualties. Did you hear me say that?
Sorry, don't turn this into a joke.
No, did you hear me? Please, Neha.
Even Israelis don't say, sir, that we endorse killings. But when you quote India only partially, I will have to correct you, sir. I am sorry. Do not play around with facts on my show. No, I will not allow it.
See, it's your show. You can throw me out. That's fine.
I'm not throwing you out. I can go. But if you're going to cherry pick facts, I will correct you.
I never
whether you like it or not. You've done exactly that. 5 sentences in support of Israel, not one sentence accepting that India says these casualties are unacceptable.
So let me check. So if you speak in my place, then you continue. Then what's the point of me having you?
If you want to say, state all the facts.
So let me tell you this. For Israel, it is very difficult to have its own allies supporting it if it continues with what it is doing. That is a statement I wanted to make. You didn't allow me to make.
I will not allow you to get away with playing around with facts. Stop accusing me.
What did I play with the facts? What did I play?
Sir, you want to make your point?
I said it very categorically.
You want to go ahead and complete your argument?
No, you cannot do this, Sneha.
I can.
I never said.
And I will.
No, you did.
If you're going to play around with facts on my show, I will.
You can just mute me. I
have
never supported the casualties.
People need to know the full facts.
I have never supported. You want a fight in the debate.
Not at all. You're not going to misquote India. That's it.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I heard you.
I said, what is the future of it? It is impossible for India to support Israel if the casualties continue. Now, does it seem to be that India is supporting casualties? I said it is impossible for India to support. What else do you want me to say?
Thank you for
saying it. It is impossible for the Middle Eastern countries. It is the Middle Eastern. Please let me finish. Otherwise, I don't want a debate like this. It is impossible for the Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arab to stand silent if the civilian casualties continue like this. Now tell me, what wrong did I say? For Egypt, it is impossible to support beyond a point what is happening or remain silent if the casualties continue. Now the question is, what does Israel want? If they want this 1.5 million people to go to Egypt, it's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. The question is this: is Israel thinking of replacing Hamas with Israel administering Gaza? Is that what they want? I don't think they will take that burden. If it is that they want the entire area to be replaced by an Israeli occupation, then it will create havoc. For Biden administration, they would say something today, they'll say something completely different tomorrow if they win the election, US presidential election. But for countries like India and many other democracies, it is impossible beyond the point, even if they support Israel as a country, to support the war, because this war is becoming counterproductive. You cannot annihilate 1.5 million people. And for India, the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor is very, very critical, in which Israel needs good relation with Saudi Arab and other Middle Eastern Arab states. That would not happen unless something is done in Gaza in terms of some kind of a peace process. And let me tell you, because you didn't allow me to say this, India has shown the right kind of template when it went for the Balakot airstrike. India defined a counter-terror response mechanism where they only targeted terror installations but had no civilian casualties. India made it clear our war is not against the people of Pakistan but against terror organizations. Now Israel will come out and say that it is complex because terror, Hamas is embedded within the civilian casualties. Then the solution cannot be that you keep on bombing that region. You need to have special operations but not bombing en masse. And that is where it is becoming very, very difficult. Let me tell you, for India, it is equally very, very difficult, not just from the perspective that it is politically impossible to support it, but also as long as the tension continues in Middle East, Red Sea will continue to be vulnerable. The cost of energy will keep on going up, and it will be untenable for many countries, including that of India. And therefore, for a long-lasting solution, even if Hamas needs to be eradicated, it cannot be simultaneously go on with civilian casualties. That is what I wanted to say. So are the Israelis clear about what end game they want? If the end game is to annihilate 1.5 million people, nobody would support. Tomorrow, even Saudi Arab will be compelled to take a strong stand against Israel, even if many of these monarchies of Middle East are against Hamas because of the link that Hamas has with Muslim Brotherhood. So there has to be somewhere a distinction between terror organization like Hamas and the civilians, even if the civilians beyond a point have been supporting Hamas. Because in today's world, you cannot do what was done to Dresden during the 1945 or 1944 during the Second World War. So this bombing or indiscriminate bombing has to stop somewhere. If it does not stop, Israel will face consequences in terms of spiraling conflicts, which is counterproductive for all, including India. Now, Neha, does it make sense to you now?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I have absolutely no problem.
You need to allow people to say before you counter.
All I'm saying is I wanted you to give out India's complete statement. That was my only
you didn't allow me. That's the thing. You have to, because I can't speak when there are two people.
You can make your argument, sir, and now I've given you 5 or 7 uninterrupted minutes. I don't think you can have any more further quarrel with me on that or accuse me of not letting you speak. I was only saying we need to put out in totality what India has said in the context of this war. I need to take a break here on Global Lens. We'll continue this conversation on the other side.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है मनी 9। आजादी पैसे की, अभी डाउनलोड करें।
You were the chosen one to direct Mr. Bachchan for his first endorsement, for his first appearance on the small screen.
It was a life-changing moment.
Have you been a rebel with a cause?
There was a sense of responsibility, there was a sense of frustration.
Are you worried about cancel culture?
You tell a story with a fierce psychosis, you're gonna spoil it anyway.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
A defiant performance by Ten Hag's men. Now standing at 7 feet 4 inches, Satnam Singh is making his way into professional wrestling.
We are getting more good news for India.
It's probably the best kept secret in India.
Family-owned business, which has been extremely clinical in their approach. They have not hesitated ever to kill their darlings.
Typical to a South Indian business empire, I think they've shunned the limelight, almost deliberately.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
For the very first time in our investigation, we unmasked the killer of Ravindra Matre.
In 5G, we have to stand with the world, and in 6G, we have to lead the world.
Winning a Grammy was an absolutely surreal experience.
The football is mother of all games.
It is a team sport.
The leadership attitude is taking the ownership.
It's always a big responsibility to take decisions and the right decisions.
I always question the stereotypical.
And that's why you are in that position.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and we're discussing the Israel-Hamas war. Let me go back to Ambassador Suresh Goyal. Ambassador Goyal, the question is, what really is Netanyahu hoping to achieve in Rafah? He says, quote unquote, we are going to finish the job in Rafah. Let me tell you and the viewers, sir, that just 2 days ago, on Monday, the US intelligence community submitted a report on its assessment of the ongoing war in Gaza. And I will tell you what that report says. That report says that not only is Hamas likely to go on for years to come, it is virtually impossible for Israel to defeat Hamas militarily. This is the honest assessment of US intelligence, and we're talking about a country which is Israel's biggest ally. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much. The fact is that you said, what does Israel want? I think so far an unstable environment in the neighborhood has, if I can look at the history, has not really worked against the interest of Israel. In a sense, let us look at it really from the historical point of view. Israel was creation of Holocaust in Europe. The Europeans had thrown Jews out from Europe, and they put them with the Balfour Declaration in the area, calling it the original Jews' land, the Zionism. And that is where the theory came from. It became the land for the Jews. Israel was created. And the same Holocaust is now perpetrated in that area to throw the Palestinians out. And I don't think that in the case of Palestine being thrown out, there is anyone really so concerned, with the exception of maybe just a few really, because the Middle Eastern countries, the Gulf countries, they all seem to be basically secure in their own energy supply chains. I'm sorry, I'm being rather careless about this kind of remark, but the fact is that Palestinians are nobody's children at the moment, number one. Number two, India was at one time, and I remember from my days in the United Nations, India was at one time the greatest champion of the right of the Palestinians.
Exactly.
India said to President Putin, Prime Minister Modi said to President Putin, Excellency, this is not the era for war. I really wish that Prime Minister Modi could say to Prime Minister Netanyahu, even on the phone, Excellency, this is not the era for war. And I think if the war can end, we can get back to really sorting the issues out. But not before that. I don't think Israel is interested in ending the war, because at the end of the war, there would be turmoil all around where the Palestinians have no place. Basically, it will be totally unstable land with miseries all around there. And Israel will be the only island of prosperity and safety, and not just stability, but a temporary kind of peace. But how long can they survive in that kind of a sea of turmoil? The phrase I used before, I don't know.
You're quite right, sir.
Yeah.
You're quite right. You know, it seems like Israel does not really have an end game at the moment. They don't seem to have a post-war plan for Gaza, and it would seem as if Netanyahu just wants the war to continue, because there are many today who are even accusing him of wanting to prolong this war for his own political survival, because the moment this war ends, there's going to be an election and he knows the people of Israel are going to show him the door. Okay, Mr. Pine, I want your thoughts on this report that I quoted earlier. I want to read some more excerpts from it. This is a US intelligence community report that was submitted in the US Congress on Monday. Now, it says some very interesting things about Netanyahu. It says, distrust of Netanyahu's ability to rule has deepened across the public from its already high levels before the war, and we expect large protests demanding his resignation and new elections. A different, more moderate government is a possibility. About Hamas, this intelligence report says Israel probably will face lingering armed resistance from Hamas for years to come, and the military will struggle to neutralize Hamas's underground infrastructure, which allows insurgents to hide, regain strength, and surprise Israeli forces. Many experts have said it is likely that the Gaza conflict will have a generational impact on terrorism, and this also underscores a concern that has been expressed by the US intelligence community thanks to the massive scale of the devastation that this war has wrought. Your thoughts?
So, Neha, first of all, when it comes to Israeli politics, it has always been messy and fragile. Coalition politics is not something new over there. And I don't think that whoever comes in place of Netanyahu, even if somebody comes, I don't think that person will be very, very soft on this. He might say something when being in opposition. When he comes to power, he'll exactly do what Netanyahu is doing, plus minus 10%. So far as the Americans are concerned, if you have seen what they have done in Ukraine, I don't think they're too much concerned. Sorry to say this, but I don't think they're too much concerned about human casualties. Today, they have disowned Ukraine. And we know what is happening over there. In Middle East, Neha, there is a counterpoint. It doesn't mean, again, don't think that I'm supporting conflicts. There has been a war in Syria, devastation, hundreds of thousands died. There has been a war in Yemen, led by a Saudi Arab-led coalition, in which, as per UN figures, around more than 300,000 people died. Nobody blinked an eye. So this is the reality of Middle East. See, the core problem of Hamas lies with Iran, lies with those who are sitting in Qatar. Nobody does anything about that. So frankly speaking, this war, even if there is a change of regime in Israel, is not going to end. The deep state of United States, which supplies the weapon systems across the world, I don't think beyond a point, again, I might be politically incorrect, but they will not want the war to end. Well, that's why I said, let the election get over in United States. Whoever comes to power will find some kind of narrative to justify what is happening in Middle East. It is a sad situation, but most of the people, most of the regions of the world are so much engrossed and tied up with their own challenges that once it goes out of the television screen, people forget what is happening elsewhere. It doesn't mean that the life of a Palestinian is less important than what it is elsewhere, but most organizations, countries are looking at it from real political perspective. So far as Palestinians are concerned, it is difficult to project or say what they should do. Let me tell you, even their Muslim brothers have disowned them. It's a reality. Israel, is it going to help them? I don't know. I don't think they can administer 1.5 million people. I don't think they can be pushed into Egypt. What is going to happen? Part of it will remain a wasteland. Maybe the northern part, Israel will rebuild it and only allow Israelis to come over there. Will it be politically acceptable to countries like India? Maybe no. It is not politically acceptable right now. But unfortunately, Neha, this is the reality of the world. There has been war after war in Iraq and many other places. Public memory, sadly to say this, is very, very short. People forget and move on and talk about economic growth and trade pacts once again. This is the reality. I might be politically incorrect, but as I reiterate, Israel has always been very messy as far as coalition politics is concerned. Netanyahu knows very well, even if he goes, he would still have some strings in his hand to manipulate. And somebody else, when he comes, he might say that I'm all for peace. Well, let me reiterate. He will do exactly what Netanyahu has done. This is not in our hand. It's not, beyond giving statements in United Nations, and rightfully so, that what is happening is not correct. What is happening will continue as it is. That is the reality. Neha, back to you.
And that is really a very, very sad and dark reality. And who's paying the price for it? The Palestinians. I can assure you, Mr. Pine, that you are more than free and welcome to express your opinions, whatever they might be, and be politically correct. That is never a problem on my show.
No, Neha, you are a good
never
friend,
a problem. I can assure you.
And we remain so. I respect you. I respect the channel. I just wanted to say that I am not at all in favor of any kind of what is happening.
Of course.
It is not.
Nobody is accusing you of supporting a war. Nobody is. I assure you of that. But as always, it's been a pleasure talking to you, to Ambassador Goel and Major Dan Feferman. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on Global Lens tonight. All right, let's now turn our attention to the United States, where the presidential elections are just 8 months away and, well, the contest is hotting up. We've known it for a while, but it's now official. It's going to be Trump versus Biden come November. US President Joe Biden and his predecessor Donald Trump have both passed the delegate thresholds to clinch their party's nominations for the upcoming presidential election. They each won several states and primary elections on Tuesday to propel them over the finish line. The two 2020 contenders will provide the US with its first rematch in a presidential election for 70 years. Polling suggests it will be a tight race that will come down to narrow margins in a few key states. The nominations will be made official at party conventions this summer. 81-year-old President Biden said he was honored that voters had backed his re-election bid in a moment when the threat Trump poses is greater than ever. That's what he said. Citing positive economic trends, he asserted the US was in the middle of a comeback but faced challenges to its future as a democracy, as well as from those seeking to pass abortion restrictions and cut social programs. Incumbency gave Biden a natural advantage, and he faced no serious challenges for the Democratic nomination. Despite persistent concerns from voters that his age limits his ability to perform the duties of the presidency, the party apparatus rallied around him. Meanwhile, 77-year-old Trump remains very popular with the Republican voter base, which has propelled him to victory in primary after primary over well-funded rivals. His campaign for a second term in the White House has zeroed in on stricter immigration laws, including a pledge to seal the border and implement record-setting deportations. Trump has also vowed to fight crime, boost domestic energy production, tax foreign imports, end the war in Ukraine, and assume an America First approach to global affairs. Well, Tuesday night's results don't come as a surprise at all, as both men have dominated their races so far. Their renomination seemed all but predetermined, despite polling that indicates Americans are dissatisfied with the prospect of another showdown between Biden and Trump in November. Well, whether they like it or not, that's how it's going to be now. Trump versus Biden.
This has been a tremendous week for our movement. We won big on Super Tuesday. They call it Super Tuesday for a reason. We won big. And now we're just days away from officially clinching the Republican nomination for President of the United States of America.
Let's now get you the latest on the India-Canada diplomatic row that has gone on for several months now, but there is now fresh support coming in for India. Amid the diplomatic face-off between India and Canada over Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's allegations about an India role in the killing of a Khalistani terrorist, a key ally of Ottawa has questioned the lack of evidence of New Delhi's involvement. Winston Peters, New Zealand's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, has said Canada has not shared any evidence that establishes its allegations. At the centre of the diplomatic row between India and Canada is the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, chief of the banned Khalistan Tiger Force and one of India's most wanted terrorists. Niger was shot dead outside a Gurudwara in Canada's British Columbia in June last year. In September last year, shortly after he attended the G20 summit in India, Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau said in Parliament that Canadian security agencies were actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the Government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India has trashed the allegations, describing them as absurd and motivated. Bilateral ties between the two countries have since nosedived. In October, Canada withdrew 41 diplomats, citing an Indian threat to unethically revoke their diplomatic immunity. India had then rejected the idea that it had violated the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. The US, an ally of both Canada and India, has said Washington, D.C. has engaged with the Indian government on this issue. Responding to questions on whether Canada had shared information on the Nijjar case with its Five Eyes allies, Peters said it was handled by the previous New Zealand government. He said, and I quote, "I wasn't here. It was handled by the previous government. But look, sometimes when you are hearing Five Eyes information, you are hearing it and saying nothing. It's coming past you. You don't know the value or the quality of it, but you are pleased to have it. You don't know whether there is going to be substantial material value or nothing, but the very, very critical information that matters. This was mainly handled by the previous government." He then went on to say, as a trained lawyer, I ask, so where is the case? Where is the evidence? Where is the finding right here, right now? Well, there isn't one. This is the first time a Five Eyes partner has questioned Canada's allegations against India. Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us again tomorrow.
Welcome to the episode 3 of TV9 Digital Social Superstar in association with Trends 9 and News 9 Plus.
Three cheers for TV9. Hip
पिछले 3 दिनों से हमारे सुपरस्टार्स एक्सपो इन स्वीट्स में हैं। यहाँ बहुत से नए कंटेंट को हमने विटनेस किया, तो साथ ही कई नए रिश्ते भी बनते देखे। कोलैबोरेशन की ऐसी दुनिया रियल लाइफ में नहीं, हमने रियल लाइफ में देखी। आइए आपको भी दिखाते हैं हमारे सीक्रेट लेंस से इनकी बॉन्डिंग और मस्ती के कुछ बिहाइंड द सीन्स। गोल्फ कार्ट से प्रॉपर्टी का हर कोना लाइक करने के बाद एक परफेक्ट रील शॉट तो बनता है ना बॉस।
ये तो होता नहीं सेक्सी लग रही है, बढ़िया एकदम रोलिंग।
उसके बाद ये चल दिया भैया गोल्फ खेलने। गोल्फ कम क्रिकेट ज्यादा बन गया। ओ देखो कितनी दूर छक्का मार दिया इन्होंने तो गोल्फ के ऊपर, और कैसे रो रहे हैं कि कितने कम रन बने हैं। अरे भैया गोल्फ में रन नहीं बनते। और मैडम का ब्रेक डांस तो देखो। अब इनकी बारी है। क्या शॉट लगाया है, वाह वाह वाह। मैडम आपने तो कमाल ही कर दिया। डांस और मस्ती तो 24/7 हो रही थी, और उसके साथ डिनर टेबल पर गॉसिप्स भी एयर ड्रॉप हो रही थी। दिन ढलने लगा था, शाम रंगीन हो रही थी, पार्टी की तैयारियां जोर शोर से चल रही थी। कुछ लोग म्यूजिक के ऊपर ग्रूव कर रहे थे, तो कुछ माइक उठा के अपना नया टैलेंट शोकेस कर रहे थे।
डेल्टा टू अल्फा 1 2 4 1 2 4। अरे 3 कहां गया?
Got up so early, still I'm running late.